and I turn my back to the owner and I face the team and I just go, come on, guys. Somebody fess up to this. Who's been stealing from the concession stand?
That was Joel Klatt, and this is On the Bench with Mike Hall. That's me. As the lead college football analyst at Fox Sports, Joel Klatt is one of the more important voices in college athletics. But be honest, had you even heard about him like 6 years ago? He rose to the top of his profession quickly, and yet is in no way an overnight success. At the turn of the century, Klatt, ending high school, got drafted in the 11th round by the San Diego Padres. He spent 2 seasons in their minor league system in Idaho Falls before leaving Idaho Falls to head back to the gridiron. Colorado accepted him as a football preferred walk-on. He won the starting QB job, and no big deal and all, but from 2003 to 2005, he set 44 school records. He finished his Buffaloes career as the program's all-time leader in passing yards, touchdowns, completion percentage, and more. While the Saints gave him a brief shot at the NFL, it wasn't meant to be. But in 2006, he started doing Denver area high school football analysis. And he was good. So good, his job expanded to college football studio and games and hosting the Colorado Rockies pre- and post-game shows for a couple seasons. When Fox launched FS1, they hired him as a college football studio analyst, and it didn't take long until they elevated him to the top Fox broadcast team alongside Gus Johnson. You can now hear his voice on huge sporting events every year, like Michigan, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, the Big Ten title game, and this podcast. Now, back before his schedule got too hectic, just before the football season started, he joined me for a chat. And I started things off by asking him, what's the best thing to do in Idaho Falls?
I mean, I don't know, really. Okay, so you bring up Idaho Falls. I was there for one summer playing minor league baseball. I would imagine it would be fly fishing on the Snake River. But I never had time. One, I don't fly fish. Two, I never had time, right? Like you just sleep and then go to the ballpark and then come back and sleep and then go to the ballpark. So I don't really know. I know we went to the Olive Garden a lot because it was the only restaurant that was open after our games. And so to get a good meal after our games, we would always go to the Olive Garden. Quick fun story about Idaho Falls is there was a few of us that pooled our money and bought this old, like 1970s Oldsmobile, like Cutlass Cruiser type of car. Yeah. I mean, it was a beater, and we didn't license it or insure it, but it was just like our way to get from the hotel to the ballpark, right? And it kind of was what it was. And then at the end of the summer, we're all looking at each other like, well, who wants the car? It was like a $300 car, and we're like, I mean, I don't want it. I'm not going to drive it home. I wanted to take the plane ticket, you know. So we're all like, well, let's just leave it on the edge of town. So we literally drove the car out there and just left it. But because there was no license or registration or anything, it never got back to us. So I think the statute of limitations probably ran out on that. I can tell that story.
Were the keys still in there? I mean, somebody's
Absolutely.
got
that. There's no doubt. We left the keys in it. There was still some gas in it, which was like a prize commodity. Like we didn't keep that much gas in the Cutlass Cruiser, but yeah, man, that thing. It rode nice and smooth. We'd pile 5 guys in there and get to the park every day.
Because, let's see, 2001 minor leaguer, what kind of coin were you pulling in back then?
None. There was no coin. Well, I mean, I think that I want to say that our monthly paycheck was like $620. Something along those lines, you know, but they claimed that they gave us 1 meal a day. Well, what they wouldn't tell you is that spread in the clubhouse was basically just like a peanut butter and jelly bar. So they would put out a couple loaves of bread and then like a big tub of peanut butter and jelly. And then what else they won't tell you is that if they ran out of peanut butter and jelly, the only other thing they had was mayonnaise, not lunch meat, mayonnaise. So there was a day when literally for the meal, it was loaves of bread and a tub of mayonnaise. And guys were like eating mayonnaise sandwiches. And I was like, this is absolutely outrageous. I'm going to take part of my $620. And in my spikes, I walked into the concourse of the small minor league stadium and I stood in line in the concession stand with the fans and got a burger about 20 minutes before the game. Oh, minor league baseball is the best.
That's a great example of what I was just going to ask you. But like, when you think back of the minor league stories, like what is your favorite minor league story?
Oh gosh. I mean, Mike, there are so many. Half of which I can't tell you. Right? I mean, like that's just kind of the way it is. I'll give you two. Okay, so we would travel every 3 days, okay? And they didn't pay for hotels the night of getaway. So getaway day in the big leagues, as you know, that's why they play day games, so the teams can get out of town kind of in time to get home and sleep in their own bed. When minor league baseball, they don't care about us. So it's like, we're going to have the game start at 7. So getaway games were still at 7 p.m., which meant that every 3 days you spent the night on the bus all summer, right? Like, it was brutal. Well, they would only keep one hotel room for the bus driver if you were on a road trip. And so that he could sleep all the way until the nighttime and then drive you through the night to get home. And we were in Casper, Wyoming one night, and I'm looking over and like in the third row, right behind home plate, I'm like, guys, isn't that our bus driver? Like, why is he at the game and not sleeping right now? And right then he literally reaches down and like takes a bite of his hot dog and then pulls up a Miller Lite and starts drinking. And I was like, what is happening right now? So the bus driver's drinking a beer, watching our games, and then from Casper to get to Idaho Falls, you got to go ride over the Teton Mountains. And it's not an easy drive, in particular in an old school Bull Durham style bus. And we had this old manual shift bus, you know, so he's had a, rounded back. It was the whole shebang. So we're going through these switchbacks in the Teton Mountains, and it is late. And I just keep thinking to myself, like, this guy, I wonder how many beers he had. Is he going to drive us off the cliff? And right about then, I hear the bus pull onto the shoulder. You know how in switchbacks and mountains, there's a few pull-offs where you can kind of get onto some gravel,
right,
or rocks, and you hear that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are we going over the edge? No, we didn't. But we come to a complete stop, and I'm like, great, the bus is broken down. No, Mike, the bus driver pulls a pillow down from over his head, puts it against the window, and takes a nap.
Nap time.
I cannot make this up. Takes a nap. Middle of the night, Teton Mountains, we're all just sleeping in the bus behind him.
And you can't do anything. It's not like you have power. You're just a minor league. Right.
No, our manager can't drive the bus. Like, this guy is the only guy that can drive the bus. Last story, real quickly, and this one is a little borderline, but it'll be all right. So there were a few of us, because of our $620, and we tried to eat at Olive Garden and everything, and we ran out of money, you know, and there was a couple days left in the month, and we're like, well, how are we going to eat? And so the clubhouse manager, he's like, I tell you what, just wait an hour until after the game, you know, after everyone leaves, come back. I'm always in here doing laundry, doing stuff like that. I've got the keys to the stadium. We're like, great, this is perfect. We're hungry. So we come back to the stadium, and he opens up the concession stand, and we start eating the red vines and the nachos. We couldn't get the grill started, so we didn't have like any of the hot dogs or burgers or anything, but we were like eating everything else, the chips, the candy, like red vines, nachos, everything that we can. We're drinking Sam Adams beer, right? Like, we're like, man, this is high class stuff here. We did it for like 4 nights at the end of the month. And the owner of the team, who basically operates the stadium, and then the big league organization operates us, the owner of the team figures it out and is livid. He's like, someone's stealing from the concession stand. What is happening? So he pulls the team. Mind you, 20 of the 28 guys were native Spanish-speaking guys. So here's the owner of the team berating a group of, guys that don't even speak English, and the 8 of us that do speak English, berating us about, like, if I don't find out who's been stealing from our concession stand, I'm going to withhold your paychecks. I'll call the organization. You won't get paid. This isn't, an aberration, blah, blah, blah. And I could not stop from like smiling like I am right now, like basically laughing. And I'm looking at the guys that were in the clubhouse managers behind the owner, and I'm about to burst into laughter. So I stand up, and the guys who were with me are like, oh my gosh, is he going to confess? Like, we're going to lose our paycheck the next month. And I turn my back to the owner and I face the team and I just go, come on, guys. Somebody fess up to this. Who's been stealing brother concessions?
That's perfect.
Oh, man.
That's like there's a comedian on Netflix named Tim Robinson who has this sketch show. He came out this thing where he was driving like an Oscar Mayer Wienermobile and it crashes into a store and all these patrons are like in like a Banana Republic and they're all saying, well, who did this? Who did this? And then Tim Robinson is wearing a hot dog outfit and he's like, yeah, who was it?
Who was this? Who did it? Somebody. He's going to withhold our paychecks. Come on.
Well, I think I know why you eventually left minor league ball.
There you go.
And so you go to Colorado to become a QB. But how'd you get back? I mean, you were a really good high school athlete. Did you sort of go, some people were interested in me a couple years ago. Guys, are you still interested now? Like, how did you get back into the college football?
Yeah, good question. I didn't have a ton of interest coming out of high school. I was a better baseball player, much better baseball player. And so most colleges just thought like, well, he's going to go play baseball, which they turned out to be right. But part of the reason why I signed to play with the Padres after being drafted is because in the back of my mind, I knew that I had some, I would retain all my eligibility rather than going and playing college baseball. So I actually went, and this is way back this is right after the 2001 college football season. And so this is like winter 2001, spring 2002. And I went to meet with a coach at Colorado named Sean Watson, who was an offensive coordinator, and he would recruit from my dad's high school. My dad was a high school football coach. And I went to meet with him, not to see if I could go to Colorado. I actually went to meet with him to see if he would introduce me to some of the other smaller schools around the area, maybe a Wyoming or maybe Boise State, Hawaii. I thought I love the Red Sox. So I was like, maybe I'll walk on at Boston College. And football was kind of an afterthought, right? I knew I wanted to go back and get an education. My lifestyle was not great. Clearly, I was stealing from the concession stand, drinking too much Sam Adams. So I needed to change my lifestyle. Like I said, needed an education. And he said, time out. If you're seriously going to just walk on somewhere, you're going to walk on here. And that's the first that I ever thought that I would be even remotely good enough to walk on somewhere. And so I thought to myself, you know what, that's a great idea. It's a great education at the University of Colorado. And if I can just run out behind Ralphie a couple of times, this is going to be worth it. I really thought that my athletic career was over after baseball. And I thought maybe I could just, walk on somewhere and be a backup quarterback, and that would be fun. And then once I got back, I realized that I had matured so much, and the lessons that I learned through stealing from the concession stand and sleeping on a bus, that maturity and those lessons that I learned gave me a huge advantage. And so all of a sudden it became apparent that, okay, you're going to have a chance to actually play. And I just took advantage of the opportunities that were afforded me. But to answer your question, by no means did I quit baseball in order to go play football at Colorado. It was absolutely by happenstance, and I had no expectation that I would actually play anytime there as a starter. And I was blessed enough to be able to start for 3 years.
Yeah, you made a pretty darn good run there at Colorado. Mostly as a dual threat, a rushing quarterback, right, Joel?
1 year. I think there was one season I ran for positive yardage.
There you go.
I think because the NCAA, of course, counts sacks against your rushing yardage. And so I think on my career in the negative, I was in the red, but definitely not dual threat. Definitely not dual threat.
So you decide, with the lack of a NFL running quarterback future ahead of you, to maybe try to get into broadcasting. You do some high school games in Denver, right?
That was interesting, Mike. So I was an economics major at Colorado, not a broadcast or journalism or anything like that. And so when I was done with football, I tried to play in the NFL briefly and got a chance to be signed with the Lions and Saints. When that didn't work out, really there was two paths for me, at least in my estimation. That was play football or coach football. And so I thought for sure I would be a coach. But what happened is that our staff at Colorado ended up losing their jobs. They got fired right at the end. And when I saw that, and I saw their families who I'd gotten so close with go through having to relocate, find new jobs, it just gave me a little bit of pause. And I thought, is that what I want? I was married at the time. Is that what I want for my eventual family? And so I just put it on pause, thinking I can always go back and do that. And I actually got into investment banking. And I put my economics degree kind of to work, and I was hired at a small REIT in Denver, and I would raise the equity sections of speculative real estate deals back in 2006, early 2007. And we were, as you can imagine, crushed when the housing market tanked. While that was happening, a guy named Ken Miller, who's a great executive in the TV industry, he's now with Altitude Sports Entertainment. He knew that I was around, and he had done the magazine show for Fox Sports Rocky Mountain at the University of Colorado. So I had worked with him as a player for a long time. And he had a high school football game that he didn't have an analyst for. And so he called me and he's like, listen, I'm stuck. I need you to do this game. And I'm like, no, I don't do I don't know what you mean. I'm not a broadcaster. I was an economics major. I don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, no, like, you'll be fine. It's just a high school game. Please, I need you to do this for me. I'll give you $200. And I was like, okay. At the time, I still was thinking about those $620 a month from minor league baseball. So I said, sure, I'll do it. Yeah, I was like, $200 for one night. This is a deal. And so I went and did it. And he stopped me after the game. I came out of the booth. He was directing the game, and he stopped me. He was like, listen, I thought you were good, so I'm going to give you more games. You can't tell me no. And it ended up, he just basically started my career for me. And he ended up sending tapes of me down to Fox Sports Southwest. And then all of a sudden they put me on their Big 12 studio show. And I was doing halftimes. He put me on the Rockies pre and post game show since I'd played minor league baseball. Then my career starts to kind of blossom and take off. I all of a sudden lose the real estate job because the market tanked. And there was a radio station that gave me a slot on their radio. So broadcasting happened completely by chance. And there was no plan for me to go this route. But once it started to work out, I fell in love with it. The right people saw the right games that I did. And all of a sudden I was on a trajectory to get a few of those breaks and open doors in order to get to where I've gotten now. And all the while, I would just tell you every single day, anybody that would ever ask me, like, what is your dream? I always stated the exact same dream. I said, my dream is to be a network's lead college football analyst, period. And so I remind myself, my wife reminds me of that all the time. She said, all those remotes you did, crawling around on floors of restaurants to plug in ISDN lines to do radio shows back in Denver, it was for this. You were building in order to do this. And so I feel very grateful to be in the position I'm in.
Well, that's the thing. It's been a really cool, I felt like a lot of people might not have even known who you were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not like you had an overnight success because, like you said, it's been almost a decade and a half basically of doing things and growing bit by bit. But it reminds me of, so I was at ESPNU and they were like, hey, there's this young guy we're going to put on with you on Monday. His name's Todd McShay. We're going to see if, and you remind me a lot of him because every time he did something, he was better the next week. He never repeated a mistake. And people will kind of be like, well, how did he become this big guy? And he's barely been around. And it reminds me a lot of you. You've done the work, but it was kind of quick. I mean, you're not even 40 and you're the top guy.
I mean, I feel I'm close to 40. Yes. But it did go fast, but like anything, you never think it's going fast when you're in the moment, right. And I have a bit of a perfectionist side of me. And so I was always looking forward and really I credit my wife. She's just an amazing, strong woman. And she continues to ground me and just say, you have to remember and look back and see, the growth and where you've had the opportunities and been blessed to have those opportunities. So she's been great. But yeah, I mean, listen, in a large extent, let me just piggyback on what you said. Those of us who have had to, quote, earn our spot in these levels, I think to some degree are better off. And let me explain why. Okay, so and you could even categorize Herb Street. Kirk kind of started very similar to I did arena football, he did arena football, and you kind of work. He was doing sidelines, and he worked himself into this. But what people fail to realize is that was thousands and thousands of hours. Todd McShay is another example of this, of making mistakes and correcting those mistakes before you're on the big stage. I see a lot of these guys that come right out of the NFL, or they have the big names, and they have to do these big games right away. And it's sometimes the first game that they've ever called. And I don't envy them, because you don't know what you don't know. And to have the trajectory of being a no-name and having the opportunity to make mistakes and grow and learn, I think was invaluable for me. And I'm sure guys like Todd and Kirk would echo those thoughts as well. Totally. Even though we wanted the game right away, like, listen, I would love a Heisman Trophy and get the opportunity. There's no doubt. But I think that there was some value in learning and crafting your career the way that guys like us had to do it.
Completely agree. I had this unbelievably lucky start. ESPN had this show called Dream Job, and I get on and win it. And so my first job was supposed to be Sports Center. And thankfully, the guys at ESPN were like, no, we are going to delay that. Like, you're going to do ESPN News. You're going to do 5-minute updates. You're going to do the 1:00 show that people don't see. You're going to learn a little bit before we put you on that big stage. And that I don't even want to think of how nightmarish it would have been if I literally was just thrown right into that. It would have been.
Oh my gosh. Because you're never ready.
No.
There's no schooling. There's no anything. Live television is way more difficult than people think. And, there's a lot of things that you can't anticipate until they come up. And to have those learning opportunities is really cool.
And the way that you work now, you have a partner who is his own form of, you got to be on your toes.
Ooh, you bet.
Give me
in a good way, right? I mean, like, in the best ways possible.
That's what you want. That's what makes good TV. Give me your best Gus impression.
Oh, I would never. I can't do a Gus. I can't do a Gus impression. I'll give you a couple of stories though.
Okay.
I can't do it justice, right? Like, he goes to a different level. You got barbecue back there? He goes to a different level.
We always love in the BTN green room when he'll read the Reese's promos, because you'll just hear us walk in the hallways going, peanut butter and chocolate.
And chocolate. Or how about when he'll go to break and he's really good at timing, so the producer's counting in your ear and he likes to take it all the way to 0. Some guys will just give their outro and then the music will play, but he likes to milk it to 0. And so he'll be like, the up 21-3 on X. And I'm just like, oh, it's just like dripping, So Gus does that really well. A quick story. Our first year working together, I was obviously nervous. He's a legend, and I didn't know like what it would be like to work with him. I didn't know what it would be like when he went there, right? That's what when he goes there, it's like, you got to stay out of his way and don't ruin it, right? Like, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to be better than when Gus goes for it. So I remember the very first time it happened, and I had been kind of waiting for it. We were doing a game. Jared Goff and Cal were playing at Texas, and this is Charlie Strong's Texas team, and Gerard Hurd ended up being the quarterback that night. But anyways, Texas kind of like comes back, and they run this little quarterback draw for a touchdown late in the game, and he goes there, right? And I'm almost a viewer. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But what I didn't realize is, and now he's become one of my favorite people on earth, his spotter, Scotty Dothar, doubles as his hype man. Like, when Gus started going for it, Scotty stopped pointing at names and everything, and he just turns to him, and he was like, and he's like dancing with them in the booth, and I'm like, I get it. Like, this is why it sounds so exciting. They were having a party in the booth, and I'm like, of course, that's why it sounds like Gus is having such a good time calling those games and going for it, is because he is having a great time and going for it. So that was my first moment. And now, man, I could not be luckier to work with a guy that I think is so good. And one thing that if anybody out there that's a play-by-play person is watching this and you're a young broadcaster, really listen to Gus, because I think his style of calling games is a bit of a lost art, in that he's a minimalist, and he really allows the analyst or me to call the football, and then he calls the nuts and bolts, and he doesn't try to get involved in the football conversation unless it's obvious, unless he needs to. And I think that provides me with the proper space to call the game as I see fit. It provides him with the proper space to call the game as he sees fit. And I think that's why our sound really works together. And we get along really well. We stay out of each other's way. And because of that, our sound, I think, is very unique, and something that I'm very proud of now after 5 years.
Right. One of the most valuable things is know your role, stay in your lane, like know
That's
exactly
right.
what.
Just like being on any team, and we talk about it, Mike, we talk about it even with like the director and the producer and Jenny, who's on the sidelines and does a wonderful job. Each of us have to know when it's time for which person to shine. Quick example, if it's the middle of the second quarter and nothing really is going on too big, we need to allow the producer time to breathe so that he can get sold elements in, so that we're not jammed at the end of the half with sold elements. It's his time to shine. He needs to own the broadcast, get things in. What does he need us to do? So I'm not going to be heavy on analysis. Gus is not going to be heavy on stories. It's our producer's time to shine. After a touchdown or a big play, we need to allow the director time to shine. So we need to lay out and allow the director to shoot the shots that can bring the viewer to the location, the crowd, the band, the players, the emotion, without steering him with our commentary. So we need to lay out, and it's the director's time to shine. The director and the producer need to know that when I get into the philosophy of the 2-minute drill and where they're going or what matchup is specific, have the shots ready. Now it's my time. And then when the big play happens, we all have to be ready for Gus's time to shine. And that's a really important lesson that I think every broadcaster should learn, is that every single part of your broadcast has elements that need their specific time to take ownership, and you got to allow for that in your style.
Well, and because of your whole team knowing their role and doing it and being selfless, you guys have been a part of some really great games and some big moments. And the last handful of years in the Big Ten, especially. Let me ask you a few things. Give me the Big Ten stadium that doesn't get enough love, that is an underrated, like you walk in there and you're okay, this is right up there with the best of them.
I mean, Iowa.
Yep.
I think Kinnick is incredible. We did a night game 2 years ago. Wisconsin went in there. I thought it was electric. I cried when we did the wave. It had everything. It was like a great speech. I laughed. I cried. I cheered. It was really great. I'm fond of Nebraska as an underrated location because I played them, and I thought playing them there, their fans were educated. They knew football. But listen, I can't speak to the whiteout at Penn State because I haven't been there and I haven't seen one. And that's kind of the nature of our draft. If people don't understand, like we draft with ESPN, we always take Michigan, Ohio State first, obviously. They always take the whiteout game second, right? So we never get the whiteout game, and it's like a bummer, but we would never give up the game. And so I would just tell you this, like doing Michigan, Ohio State is a different level.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Either stadium, doesn't matter. It's incredible.
I can imagine it's one of those games that just feel like you walk in and the air is thicker. If you're at a Michigan Ohio State game, it feels different than any other game, I would imagine.
It feels different from the time the plane lands on Thursday, and I walk into the airport and people are looking and watching, and a lot of times, like now in those cities, maybe not so much Detroit, but in Columbus, a lot of people will stop me. Like, hey, have fun at the shoe. So, you drive in and we stay at the same hotels. So the people at the hotels know us and they're like, man, can't wait for the game. It's palpable from the time the plane lands, the energy. I can't explain it. It's certainly my favorite game to be a part of as a broadcaster.
I bet. I can only imagine what it's like calling, and the pressure you feel on it too has got to be.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a lot of people. We know there's going to be 15, 16, 17 million people watching, and that's the game without question. And any big game, by the way, whether it's Penn State, Ohio State, the bigger the game, the more the vitriol of the fan base is towards the broadcast team. And so you just have to expect that.
Yeah.
But it almost is like a badge of honor. You got to go through it, and it's fun.
We're talking about great games and great stadiums and Big
Mm-hmm.
Ten tradition. And I think there's the obvious national perspective that your big boys are your Ohio States, Michigans, Penn States. Obviously, Nebraska has that history. Michigan State's already made a playoff. There's a lot of Big Ten teams that are in there.
Yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts as a program on Wisconsin. They've got this astonishing, a historic, wonderful building that they play in. They got a Heisman candidate like every third year.
Yeah.
They've got a pipeline to the NFL of offensive linemen. They win 10 games or more, play in January bowl games like basically every year. And yet I feel like nationally, they're just seen as like a pretty good program. Whereas I feel like so many years, Joel, they're like one win, one touchdown away from being in that upper elite status.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think the only thing that's held them back is that they haven't gotten that win.
Right.
Even the Rose Bowl last year, that's a game they need to win. Right? And listen, I love Wisconsin. I love Paul Chryst. This is one of those programs, and I wish more programs around the country were like this. It's one of those programs that is so good because they know who they are.
Right.
They are so uniquely aware of who they are, how they should win, what their fan base is like, what their nature is. They don't deviate from that, and they put together the best product that they possibly can. I think Nebraska, to a large extent, really is paying the price for getting outside of their identity way back when I was playing. And they're still trying to recover from that to a large extent. And that's why it's going to take them a while. Whereas Wisconsin just stays the course. They are the freight train, if you will. Like, it's going to be on time. It stays on the rails. Here it is. I'm a big fan of Wisconsin's program. And that next step for them is making sure that they do win. Maybe it's a Big Ten championship game that they should win. Maybe it's the Rose Bowl that I thought that they should have won. Those things I think are very important for them. And even to a lesser extent, and this is why Michigan State was able to get over the hump those couple of years, they beat Ohio State, right? Like, let's be honest about the Big Ten. Like, if you're going to claim that you're going to play at the top end of college football, you have to beat Ohio State. Michigan State was able to do that a couple of times. And thus they were able to go to a Rose Bowl. They beat Stanford in a Rose Bowl. They got to a college football playoff. And I think those are important milestones for any program. And that would be the next step for Wisconsin.
Yeah, that is probably the hardest one, right? That last step.
Oh my gosh. Well, and it's getting harder with the way they're recruiting. Ohio State's not going anywhere, folks. Like, Ryan Day is
crushing.
I mean, I was talking with Urban the other day. You may see Ohio State go up a level, from what they work, because they're recruiting even at a higher clip than they have in the past, which is scary if you're the rest of the teams in the Big Ten.
Right. One of the legends in the history of college football leaves, and they're recruiting at an even slightly better level right now.
It's wild. Totally wild.
All right. You've been great with your time. So before we go, we're going to do 4 questions that have nothing to do with one another.
Great. I love it.
Your best hidden talent away from sports.
So golf doesn't.
No. Which, by the way, before you answer that, you have a handicap of 1?
No, I don't. It's actually a +2. Sorry.
So, just to be clear.
I'm sorry. Listen, I was trying not to be like a jerk about that. But,
no, I just for the record, you're a great golfer. You set records at Colorado at quarterback, and you were a minor league. Oh my God. Yeah, he's showing me his app. +2 handicap. What sports do you suck at?
I'm not sure, because if I sucked at them, I stopped. Like, I don't attempt them. A hidden talent. I can play a little guitar.
Okay.
I would say that one's a hidden one.
Are we talking like 2 chords, or you can play a handful of songs?
I can play a few songs. I'm not going to sing them. That's certainly not a hidden talent. What else? How's this one? I am a very fast typer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You take a class in high school and just got really good at it?
Yes, I did. It was always I took too many of them because it was like easy credits. So I took like keyboarding 1, keyboarding 2, keyboarding 3, so yeah, there you go.
All right. Number 2, give me the best pure athlete you've ever been around.
Oh, gosh. Pure athlete. See, my mind's going in so many different directions because when I think of pure athlete, I think of guys that can do any sport. But then I also just think of like unbelievable play, like Reggie Bush would be one. I was with him in New Orleans when he first was drafted there and handed off to him in his first OTAs, and just watching him, he was incredible. I think Reggie would have to be it. I think Vince Young would be up there. He was the best player I ever saw.
Yeah,
certainly when I was playing. That's a good question. The best pure athlete. Oh gosh, that's probably it. Yeah. Vince and Reggie, pretty good.
So anyone who was at that 2006 Rose Bowl was seeing some pretty good talent between Texas and USC that year.
No doubt.
Number 3, everyone's got an opinion on this. Sell me on the best type of pizza anywhere.
I'm a big fan of Chicago-style pizza. I like deep dish pizza. And so my favorite pizza on the planet is Lou Malnati's in Chicago. Anytime in fact, I lobby for at least one Northwestern game a year just so I can get to Chicago so that we can have Lou Malnati's pizza. I love it. It's the thickness of it means you can only eat. Maybe you only need 1 slice, but if you have 3, fine, because like it's a big night, right? Like, oh gosh, it's the right type of grease. It's the right type of buttery flake on the crust. It's the heavy enough cheese that makes it feel like, yes, I'm eating a pizza and not just like some, very thin, like floppy deal that's too greasy. I love deep dish pizza. Lou Malnati's is the best pizza on the planet.
Yeah, there's a reason they're quite popular here.
That's right.
In Chicago. All right, number 4. What are you already started to tell me some of this, but in your whole life, even as a high schooler or whatever, the non-sports jobs you've had?
I worked in like a stockyard at a Ferguson, like plumbing and electric, Ferguson, like bathroom fixtures and everything.
Yeah, sure.
So, I was in high school. We had to do the steel toe boots and do all that stuff. And like, we would take all the copper pipe and we would take it in and put it into the warehouse, and we would drive the forklifts around and stuff like that. That was great. It's kind of sports related, but I was during baseball, when I would come home for the off season, I worked at the local high school football stadiums, and I would help be part of the grounds crew. And I loved that job, mowing the grass and painting the lines and doing all of that. And then the REIT, I was an investment banker for 1.5 years, and it did not end well.
Well, you landed on your feet one way or another, Joel, and it's been really cool to watch you. What a great addition you've been to the sport we all love.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for your time and say, if anyone has earned a peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich, my man, it is you.
Whew. I got to tell you, let me tell you what I don't like anymore. Mayonnaise. Am I right?
Thanks, Joel.
You got it. Have a good one, Mike.
So to recap, if you see a random Cutlass Cruiser on the side of the road, it might just be Joel Klatt's. He loves games at Kinnick Stadium. And if you see him around the Chicago area, give him some Lou Malnati's. My thanks to Joel Klatt for joining me. Heads up, our pal Alex Rue has his Take 10 podcast. Listen to that every time he's got a new episode. But that's going to do it for us. From the Big Ten Network in Chicago, I'm Mike Hall. We'll see you next week.